Oh, I didn't change my name. I got to change my name. We need to do our titles or whatever on you. Rename yourself.
Brian, I think everyone that was in the waiting room is now in our meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us for the third of our four online community engagement meetings for Salt Lake County's West General Plan, which is a long-range, high-level document to help guide the future of the western third of the county, with particular emphasis on the unincorporated areas. I'm Brian Wilkinson of Wilkinson Ferrari and Company Communications. I'm part of the project team, and I'll be the MC for this evening's meeting. We have a lot to cover, so let's briefly just go over the agenda. You could pull the agenda up on the screen, please. There you go. Let's see, in just a moment, I'll introduce the group of folks who are here tonight to answer questions and respond to comments. Then we'll watch a short video, about 10 minutes or so, that provides an overview of the West General Plan planning process, the need for the plan, and the progress that has been made today. That will be followed by a presentation by Salt Lake County planners with more details about the needs and opportunities of the three geographic areas the planning process focuses on. All of those will be discussed tonight, although the main focus of tonight's meeting is on the North Oquirrhs area, which includes unincorporated county areas as well as parts of West Valley City, Kearns Metro Township, and Magna Metro Township. Following that presentation, which would last about 20 minutes or so, we'll have ample time for questions and answers with our group of experts before we adjourn at 7. Let's see here. We'll get into explaining how to ask questions and make comments as we get further into the evening, right before the session, the Q&A session. So now let's briefly introduce our panel of experts, and then we'll watch the video. With us this evening are Helen Peters, who's program manager, for Salt Lake County. Ryan Perry, Director of Regional Planning and Transportation for the county. Jake Young, who is the Planning Program Manager for Salt Lake County and is the project lead for this effort. Jordan Carroll, who manages communications in Salt Lake County. Let's see here, Megan Townsend from the Wasatch Front Regional Council, which is our area's metropolitan planning organization. We'll explain what that is later. She manages community and economic development. Thomas McMurtry is a transportation consultant that works with the county on this planning process. I introduced myself already. And finally, Shane Swenson, who is from the Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District. Water Conservancy District. We were talking about water conservation earlier, so that was on my mind. Okay. Thank you all for joining us this evening, and looking forward to a good discussion and responding to questions as we go forward. So let's now watch the short video that will give us an overview of why we're all here.
And Brian, if I miss anyone, I'm sorry, but I am showing, I want to recognize Associate Deputy Mayor Lisa Hartman on with us as well. And any other officials that may be present. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for that, Ryan. Okay, on with the show.
I'm Salt Lake County Mayor Jenny Wilson, and I'm standing here on the county's beautiful west side with the vast Great Salt Lake and its wetlands to the north and the towering Oquirrh Mountains behind me. Utah and Salt Lake County have grown quickly in recent years and will continue to for the foreseeable future. Growth can bring great opportunities to our residents and communities, but it can also bring challenges that require us to work collaboratively and proactively to plan for tomorrow and beyond. Salt Lake County is planning for the future of the large unincorporated areas along the West Bench and the Great Salt Lake shoreline, as well as planning for other opportunities and challenges that we will face as the county continues to grow. We thank you for investing your time in helping to shape the future of Salt Lake County by sharing your feedback, and we look forward to working with you to make our community a beautiful, safe, sustainable, and thriving place to live and work.
Salt Lake County, Utah's most populous area, has more than 1.2 million residents today and is expected to grow to 1.8 million people or more by the year 2065. That's a third more residents, 600,000 more over the next 40-plus years. While this may sound like a long time, it will be here before we know it, especially considering the amount of time it takes to adequately plan and prepare for sustainable growth. So, where will these new residents live? Some new residents will live within existing cities located in the eastern two-thirds of Salt Lake County, while many more will likely reside in the western third. This area contains most of the remaining vacant, developable land, and is where approximately 60% of the county's growth has occurred since 2000. This map shows land that can potentially be developed within existing cities and townships, as well as land in unincorporated Salt Lake County that could be developed in the long term. Planning for and managing growth is critically important, yet it's not an easy thing to do. Planning for growth is a shared responsibility that involves government agencies at the federal, state, county, and municipal levels. All municipalities and counties are required to have long-range plans for the future, called general plans. Counties are responsible for land use planning in unincorporated areas. In Salt Lake County, this includes Wasatch Canyons and large parcels of unincorporated land in the western portion of the county. Funds for many growth-related issues, such as road construction and transit, are distributed through multi-county agencies, like the Wasatch Front Regional Council, or transportation agencies like UDOT and UTA. Salt Lake County started the West General Plan process in 2018 and is expected to conclude in 2021. Planning for and managing growth is critically important and requires a series of steps, beginning with an inventory and assessment of existing conditions, such as the existence of roads, utilities, and other infrastructure and their condition, the types of nearby land uses, priorities laid out in adjacent cities' general plans, the availability of water, the county's ability to provide services to new development, and plans of surrounding private landowners. Once the detailed research is complete, the next step is to share that information with residents and local officials, seek their comments, and listen to suggestions through open houses, presentations, workshops, and online surveys. For example, since the West General Plan process began, the county has held over 25 engagement meetings and conducted 2 online surveys. The first survey, seeking feedback on growth issues with the plan, received a total of 2,534 responses and 1,268 comments. The second survey on the vision statements had 2,066 responses and 3,876 comments. To plan for growth and land conservation, the county needs to evaluate the challenges and opportunities presented by both and find the balance between them. Growth can bring new job prospects, increased sales tax revenue, greater variety in housing, and more and improved community amenities. However, growth can also bring significant challenges, making it difficult to provide housing for new residents, build roads and transit systems, extend utilities, and provide desired parks and recreation opportunities. And importantly, growth can also raise concerns from current residents about how the county can accommodate new neighbors and development without harming the existing quality of life. Conserving critical lands, habitat, and natural recreation resources also requires careful thought. It takes specific planning, financial resources, and long-term commitments by the public and governments. To illustrate how Western Salt Lake County can grow and provide significant opportunity for those who live, work, learn, and play there, A series of vision statements were drafted based on community input. The public was then asked to review these statements and provide comments via an online survey. The survey results convey what residents feel the future for Western Salt Lake County can be. 68%, more than 2/3 of survey respondents, said they agree with the plan's draft vision statement. Salt Lake County's vision is that the West areas provide enduring communities, employment centers, and open spaces. Communities are integrated with a multimodal transportation system and driven by a commitment to respect the landscape, conserve natural systems, and develop public resources. These future communities consist of a variety of districts, centers, and neighborhoods, each creating safe and beautiful places for our children, current and future generations, to live and work. Residents who took the survey also had positive reactions to more specific vision statements about land use, transportation, recreation, environment and conservation, economy, housing, and utilities and public safety. As Salt Lake County looked at its role in planning for the future of unincorporated areas, 3 geographic zones stood out for the West General Plan: the Great Salt Lake Shoreline, North and Central Oquirrh Mountains, and the Southwest Oquirrhs and Camp Williams. Each of these areas presents unique opportunities and challenges. The Great Salt Lake Shoreline includes a mixture of large preserved wildlife habitat, bird refuges, private waterfowl management areas, and some of the last working farms in the county. It plays a key role in protecting the Great Salt Lake through water rights, natural land conservation, and the preservation of historic uses. Some significant challenges in the area include the shrinking of the Great Salt Lake, changing adjacent uses including the construction of a new state prison, and ensuring that current and future land uses remain compatible with the preservation of habitat for migratory birds and other wildlife. In the northern and central parts of the Oquirrh Mountains, where much of the land is privately owned by Rio Tinto Kennecott, the focus is on mining reclamation, conserving land for future parks, recreation and natural green spaces, and potential future residential communities and job centers. The southwestern corner of the county, including Camp Williams, offers significant potential for multiple high-quality recreation opportunities in Butterfield, Yellow Fork, and Rose Canyons. The area also offers the potential for partnering with the state on land conservation, fire protection, and public safety in the Camp Williams area. So, what happens next with the West General Plan? Over the next several months, the county will seek additional public feedback about the 3 geographic areas of focus, including soliciting suggestions about how to achieve community goals in each area. After a series of engagement activities, a draft West General Plan will be presented to the County Planning Commission and County Council for review. Both governing bodies will hold public hearings which will provide additional opportunities for the community to give their input. Once approved, county officials will start working with communities, landowners, municipalities, and other stakeholders to implement the plan.
Thank you for taking the time to learn about the importance of the West General Plan and how we are investing in the future of Western Salt Lake County. This plan shows us what the Great Salt Lake Shoreline, the Oquirrh Mountains, and the Southern Traverse Ridge area could look like in 40 years. Some of the items in the general plan are applicable today. Others will be better preparing us for the coming decades. The input we receive from county residents is vital to shaping our future, acknowledging population growth while maintaining the high quality of life we enjoy today. I encourage you to learn more about this process and stay up to date on the latest involvement opportunities by visiting the project website. On behalf of all of us in Salt Lake County, thank you again.
Brian, you're on mute.
Thank you. Apologize. Oh, goodness. Great. I hope you found the video was provided a good overview of the West General Plan and why and how it's being done. Let's dig a bit deeper now and explore the needs of the three planning focus areas, with an emphasis though on the North Oquirrhs area. I'd like to introduce Jake Young again, Salt Lake County planner and project manager for the plan. He's going to walk us through a presentation, and then Helen Peters, Salt Lake County transportation planner, will also join in. Unless I've missed anything, let's take it away, Jake.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you to all of you for attending tonight's online community engagement meeting. We wish we could be in person, but due to circumstances, we're meeting online through these online community engagement meetings. And we have found that folks are able to, from all over the county, meet, from the convenience of their own home. So if you're not familiar, you may ask, what is a general plan? Well, a general plan is a long range or comprehensive plan for counties. Cities also have them. Your city where you live today probably has a general plan as well. General plans are general in nature and not detailed master plans. Typically, general plans have a 15 to 20 year planning horizon. This one goes even farther, looking at 30, 40, 50 years down the road. General plans are required by Utah State Code. You may wonder, well, what is the difference between a general plan and zoning, or what is the process from big picture planning to implementation? This diagram shows you kind of the process or major steps from a general plan to zoning. General plans are broad, set the big picture, and then transportation plans go along with general plans. Area plans looking at specific areas, parks and trails, and that moves into capital improvements, utilities, roads, specific infrastructure. And then the last important piece of the puzzle is zoning and site plans. And that's where you see more detail, is in the zoning, the site plans, construction plans. So this gives you a diagram of how general plans move into zoning plans becoming more detailed and specific. What's required in a general plan? Land use, transportation, and housing. In addition, this plan will also include environment and conservation, recreation, economy, utilities, and public safety. Again, the three areas of the plan are the shoreline area, the North and Central Oquirrhs, and the Southwest Oquirrhs and Traverse Mountains. We began this process in 2018 doing existing condition research. You can find that information at our oquirrhview.org website. And not only were we looking at unincorporated areas of Salt Lake County, we were also looking at how the western 1/3 of Salt Lake County has grown. And so we studied the area from Bangerter Highway to the tops of the Oquirrh Mountains, looking at all kinds of information such as growth and demographics, housing, transportation, really diving in deep, utilities, all that is in that report. 2019, we did a survey looking at major issues that residents are concerned about. We also have been working with cities, landowners, land managers. We've been out in the field. We've been all over the county, really understanding the issues on site, talking with people. Ongoing, we have Planning Commission review and discussion monthly. We regularly meet with our steering committee, continual meetings with stakeholders and elected officials, and also public surveys and public meetings as well. And again, thank you for coming tonight. As mentioned in the video, we have a vision for the overall plan, but also there are specific visions for each of the 7 categories or the 7 elements: land use, housing, transportation, environment, recreation, economy, utilities, and public safety. These vision statements are very important, and they also come with guiding principles of how to carry out that vision. We took that vision draft and we shared it with the public, received more than 2,000 responses, 3,800 comments. And if you haven't had time yet, I'd encourage you to look up our vision by going to the project website, and you'll see the vision there and the survey and the responses from the public regarding the vision. The project, as mentioned, the project began in 2018 and is expected to conclude by the end of 2021 this year. Here's a look at the timeline. Well, this is the third of our 4 community online meetings. And our final meeting will be next Monday with the focus more on the Southwest area, Butterfield Canyon, Camp Williams area. Before we dive into talking about the Oquirrhs, I want to share just a little bit about the shoreline area and a little bit about the Southwest Traverse Mountain area. The shoreline area is the southern part of the Great Salt Lake and also the north part of Salt Lake County. This map shows you some of the major landowners or land use areas. In yellow are the waterfowl areas, in green, agriculture, in blue is the Audubon habitat area, and then also in green on the lower left, or the ISSR property, is Rio Tinto's Inland Sea Shorebird Reserve property as well, working in conjunction with the Audubon property. Some of the issues facing this area include hotter, drier Utah climate, the Great Salt Lake is shrinking, threats from utility corridor expansions, road expansions, agriculture lands changing, also adjacent land uses changing and developing, such as the airport, the inland port, and also the new correctional facility. What are the opportunities for this area? Well, they include the opportunity to further preserve the land and habitat, creation of buffers between uses, continue agricultural uses and farm preservation. Also, Rio Tinto is looking at a potential outreach educational center. And there's opportunity for partnerships to collaborate and work together. The recommendations for this area include a greater awareness of the Great Salt Lake and the watershed and how this area contributes to the Great Salt Lake. Future land use and zoning changes focused on conservation, ensure that future transportation and utilities are compatible with conservation. Also water conservation. And I really want to emphasize that water conservation is not only for the shoreline area, but for the entire plan. Water conservation for new development as well will be a significant part of the plan. Explore and consider conservation tools, and then also collaboration on removing invasive weed species. When looking at that in a map, you see the SC for most of the area. That stands for shoreline conservation, and that's conservation of agricultural uses and also habitat. Now we want to talk just a minute about the Southwest Oquirrhs and also the Traverse Mountains. A nice, beautiful picture of Yellow Fork and Rose Canyon in the southwest corner. This area, a lot of different landowners in the area. And particularly looking at the area, we're talking about Butterfield Canyon and going south and southeast. Butterfield Canyon is the yellow line you see, kind of the squiggly line there, that's Butterfield Canyon. This area has land ownership of private areas in the High Country Estates area, the BLM in the rose color, and then Salt Lake County in the orange, and then the Camp Williams in blue. Some of the Rio Tinto properties are shown in a tan color as well. So that's the land ownership of this area. I'm going to skip the first issues here because we're going to talk a little bit more about them when we get to the Oquirrhs. But the additional issues that you'll see on the bottom of the screen include growing recreational demands for Butterfield Canyon and the challenges with Butterfield Canyon the way it is today. It's a narrow road, has debris challenges, graffiti, lack of cellular service, lack of amenities, the need for additional maintenance, and multiple landowners in the area. Camp Williams faces challenges with incompatible adjacent development, trespassing, wildfire risks, and poaching. What are the opportunities for this area? Well, Butterfield Canyon and that area could become a major outdoor recreation destination, more than it is today. It could be comparable to Mill Creek at some point, or Corner Canyon and Draper, with trails for all types of uses, landowners working together, Salt Lake County, BLM, Rio Tinto, Camp Williams, Harriman, and others all working together. Camp Williams is working on creating a land buffer around the entire military base. This area could be preserved as habitat, but also used as recreation opportunities as well. The recommendations for this area include recreation, conservation, rural, residential, and military. An additional recommendation is for Salt Lake County to lead planning for Butterfield Canyon and to include the planning that's already taken place for Yellow Fork and Rose Canyon planning for the trails. Additional recommendations include acknowledging Camp Williams and their continued operation for the training that they provide to the National Guard, police, and others, supporting Camp Williams with the buffer initiative, and work with Camp Williams on trail opportunities, and then also for high country estates to continue as rural residential. Here's a map showing what this area could look like in terms of future uses. Rural residential in purple, conservation areas in green, recreation in yellow, and then military in gray. Now we're going to talk about the Oquirrhs, the north and central part of the Oquirrhs. Here's a picture looking north from the pit, looking at the ridge of the Oquirrh Mountains. When looking and planning and talking about the Oquirrh Mountains, it's important to understand the land ownership. Primarily, the majority of the land is owned by Kennecott Rio Tinto. You'll see it before you in the colors of sand or tan there. But there are some other private property owners as well in green, and then also the last holdout property in pink towards the bottom of the Oquirrhs and on your screen. But in general, it's important to understand that there is a single landowner in Rio Tinto on the Oquirrh Mountains. It's also important to understand the geography of the Oquirrhs. So take a look at your screen and you'll notice that the Wasatch Mountains are steeper. They have steeper benches, they have steeper ridges and mountains heading towards the top. And the Oquirrhs are more rolling hills, gradually sloping mountains, and then they get steeper towards the back. This is a critical component of the planning. When looking at mammal habitats, there's elk habitat on the north and the higher slopes, and also mule deer habitat on the lower slopes, moving towards the south and Camp Williams. Mining is the big historical use in this area. Bingham Kennecott Mine began in 1906. It is the deepest and largest open pit mine in the world. Approximately, the mine is approximately 3/4 of a mile wide and 2.5 miles deep. About 11,500 acres have been reclaimed at the cost of more than $500 million. And the current proposed operation timeframe is early to mid 2030s. However, in the past that has been extended and could certainly be extended in the future in terms of mining. Some of the issues this area faces include post-mining impacts, what will happen with the land after the mine closes or areas close down, how it will be reclaimed, east to west traffic in Salt Lake Valley, the need for additional transportation systems, the need for more local jobs on the west part of Salt Lake County, water availability, utility infrastructure for fast-growing areas, potential loss of habitat in forested areas, land development and growing population near active mining areas, wildfire risks, housing affordability for the general population, and also air quality issues that we all face. What are the opportunities for this area? Well, we do have time. We have time to planning for transit and transportation solutions. Some of the mining related opportunities include reclamation, conservation of natural lands and habitats, development of new recreational trails and parks, potential for clean energy production, potential for master planned communities with centers, jobs, housing, and recreational spaces. The Midas area on the south could be developed in the near term. and that's approximately 3,500 acres. Coordination of master plan communities among multiple jurisdictions. Many of the communities on the west side have master plan communities, and these areas could be planned and coordinated even further than they are today. And also opportunity for a West Bonneville Shoreline Trail, like we have, that's being built and is existing on the east side of Salt Lake County. Some of the recommendations for this area include establish a regional land conservation plan and process. The county to collaborate with other jurisdictions in negotiating with Rio Tinto for land conservation and access to Oquirrh Mountains. And some of these things may happen in the future, in this decade or in the next decade to come. Continue mining reclamation process with Rio Tinto. And there's multiple state agencies, a county agency, and then the EPA that all collaborate together when it comes to working with Rio Tinto on mining reclamation. Some of the potential future uses include conservation, recreation, master plan communities, industrial, and commercial. We're also recommending an update to the master plan community process, requiring detailed planning of utilities, transportation, housing, land conservation, development agreements, jobs, zoning standards, centers, complete communities. And a complete community is not just housing, but commercial, retail, civic, institutional, parks, really has everything that a community needs to survive and thrive. Also, we're recommending that the county and others work with Rio Tinto to solidify agreements and alignments for a future West Bonneville Shoreline Trail and trails combining and connecting to that trail. Now, you may be asking, well, how does this look on a map? And this is a future land use map. And the first thing I want you to look at is the red diagonal line on the map. You'll see the red diagonal line from here at the south all the way to the north. And these areas on our legend say limited development until post-mine closure. And what that means that these areas should not be developed until the mine is closed or there's significant changes in mining operation in those areas to allow for development and land use changes. The areas in brown or the MN represent reclaimed historic mining areas. The I represents industrial areas. The MPC in pink represents master plan community areas. The areas in green or CN represent conservation areas. RC or yellow represent recreation areas. And of course, during the Q&A, we'll be able to talk about this. There's an important correlation and connection between land use and transportation and how they work together. And in well-planned communities, land use and transportation function and support each other. And with that, I want to turn the time over to Helen Peters and Thomas McMurdy from our transportation team to talk about transportation.
Great, thank you, Jake. This is Helen Peters, and I am the Transportation Program Manager for Salt Lake County. And I'm going to talk to you a bit about transportation today, but one of the things that Jake just left the conversation with is land use and transportation, how important that is, that as an area is being built out, we look at the transportation, the regional transportation network that usually comes into play prior to the local streets. So by connecting with transportation and land development, then you have improved mobility. And then as a community starts to develop in such as in this area, there are land use changes. And then you go back through the cycle again of looking at what is happening with the land use and how does transportation support that effort. So it's kind of a circular type of thing that occurs over time in a community. Okay, next slide. So there are two organizations that are responsible for land or transportation planning in this area of the unincorporated Salt Lake County. One is the Great Salt Lake Municipal Service District, or the MSD as it's frequently called. And they are responsible for planning at the local level. And then the Wasatch Front Regional Council is a metropolitan planning organization that's responsible for transportation planning in this area. And they develop every 4 years regional transportation plan for active transportation, roadway or highway, and or excuse me, just for local regional roadways, and then also for transit. So what I have here is a map that's showing the regional transportation plan, the active transportation plan for the next 30 years, which is what the regional transportation plan is for, and it does it in 10-year increments. And it is, so you can see the blue lines are the active transportation projects in the near term in the next decade, then green is the decade after that, and then finally between 2040 and 2050 we have the yellow lines. And you can see in this area there's really not a lot of infrastructure right now for active transportation. There is a new roadway proposed, the Oquirrhs Boulevard, and that is proposed to also have an active transportation element with it. But you can see the Bonneville Shoreline Trail West, we talked about that. The alignment hasn't been determined at this point, but that's something that Salt Lake County Parks and Recreation is working on. The shared use path I've just mentioned for SR 111 and Bacchus Highway, and then also east-west connections are very important in this way, in this area, to make sure that there's good mobility between the far western side of the county and the rest of the county, the 2/3 to the east. Next slide. Okay, this is the roadway network that is proposed in the regional transportation plan. You can see there's the Oquirrhs Boulevard in the yellow, and then you can see there's a lot of east-west connectivity into that roadway. U111 is kind of the backbone in this area of roadways, and as this area is developed, the developer will work with the Utah Department of Transportation using access standards for the roadway. And so that each developer will work with UDOT to determine where exactly the access is going to be based upon those access management standards that UDOT abides by. I know that people have looked at the Butterfield Canyon Road, the Ochre connection between Tooele and Salt Lake County. And again, we're looking at east-west connections, and you can see there's a lot of east-west connections that are part of the regional transportation plan that are outside of this area. Those are important to make sure that there's good connectivity to improve mobility. And then the next slide is transit. So as you can see, transit is driven by ridership. And so you can see that the further into the Salt Lake Valley you go, or to the northeast portion, you have a good network for transit. And that's something that we're going to have to build out here in the unincorporated area. But as you can see, we have a transit dark green for the next decade, lighter green for 2030 to 2040, and a lighter green yet for the transit need in 2040 to 2050. So we'll be looking at things that UTA is telling us they're bringing on board. Core route service at 15 minutes and 5 minutes. But again, we'll have to work in this area to possibly do something to encourage ridership, and then work with that to bring in core route bus service. One of the bus services that maybe people are aware of is the bus rapid transit that is slated for 5600 West, that will connect to the International Center and then into Salt Lake City into the intermodal hub. So hopefully that will be able to take individuals from residential areas and into areas where there are jobs. So that would be public transit for that. Next slide. Okay, and then I just wanted to make people aware that in the southwest portion of the valley, they have done a transportation study, and they have looked at increasing roadway options, transit, and active transportation. And they have been working on this for about a year, and there's a preferred scenario. And I know that this evening we have Megan Townsend, who's been the project manager at Wasatch Front Regional Council, on the line. So I'm going to turn this over to Megan to just spend 2 or 3 minutes on this.
Sure. Yep. And so this is the preferred scenario from that study. It's of course it's a study. We worked a lot with the communities as far as the cities in this study area to come up with this preferred scenario. But there's still a lot of work to do. Right. There's a regional transportation planning process and a UDOT prioritization process through which to consider these projects and further study on many of these routes. Essentially, what's in this preferred scenario, in the roadway scenario, it's the regional transportation plan, what's already planned, in addition to the city's current transportation master plans, along with a couple of new projects, most notably this system-to-system interchange between Magna and Mountain View here at 126 South. That's something that needs a lot of further study, but would provide some better east-west mobility as far as automobile traffic goes. In the transit scenario, there's core service 5 bus throughout. This is 5-minute headways of a more established bus, very established stations, as well as the core service 15 bus through part of the study area. There was also a study done on autonomous transit. So this line, that far west light blue line, is a route that could be autonomous in the future. Again, a lot of further study needed there, as we're not seeing too many examples yet of that autonomous transit. And then finally, the active transportation network is just the active transportation regional plan. And you can see the planned and existing AT network there.
Great, thank you, Megan.
Yep, thanks so much. Okay. And another really important piece of transportation is making sure that there's good regional connectivity so that you're able to get to places across the valley in a reasonable amount of time. So we looked at active transportation connections. So that's important to make sure that all the trails connect, including the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. Ultimately, there'll be a Bonneville Shoreline Trail that completely surrounds the Salt Lake Valley. Transit connections, wanted to make sure that those occur so that they hit job centers and that they provide a good coverage in terms of making sure that there are buses that occur late at night and early in the morning when people are going to work. And then we want to make sure that we have regional roadway connections that improve east-west mobility, and that will be important over time to make sure that the east-west arterials connect into the unincorporated county as well. Next. And then very important piece in this area is making sure there's local connectivity. The area that is dashed in green and red is just an illustration of of a network that needs to happen at the local level. So many individuals in the southwest portion of the valley are using regional facilities to access local locations. And so by having a finer grained network, it allows for people to walk to locations or bike to locations. People usually walk about 1/4 of a mile, bike for about 1 mile. And so it's important to have those street connectivities also for transit as well. Transit works well in a very network type of environment as well. So we're hoping to build the local connectivity that helps communities, so it makes it easier to have a job and shop and stay within one location, and it helps you not have to have the travel distance that you might otherwise for a job or for other items. I wanted to also mention that as projects come into the Great Salt Lake Municipal Service District, they will engage in a process that results in a master development agreement. And in part of that, they, as it was mentioned earlier, they need to identify a transportation and traffic circulation plan, and that is part of the review of their projects before they're issued building permits. So at this point, a lot of the transportation network is very negotiable based upon the developer's desires. And then also working with UDOT and UTA and other transit agencies. And I guess that's it for me. So it looks like questions.
Thank you, Helen. And Brian, that concludes our presentation, and we're ready for Q&A and discussion and questions.
Very good. Thank you, Jake and Helen and Megan. Lots and lots of information in a pretty short period of time there. So we're looking forward to hearing from you, your questions and comments. Two ways that you can ask a question or make a comment. First is the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, of the Zoom screen, where you'll see Q&A. There's one already, it looks like. You can click on that, type your question, and then we'll read your question and answer it. If you have a comment and just want to like request information or something, feel free to do that as well in the Q&A, and a member of the team will type an answer back to you. Okay, the second way is if you prefer to make your ask a question or make your comment verbally, you can certainly do that. Use the raise hand button also at the bottom. You just click on that and we will call on you as the list populates here. So let's see, ground rules, I guess. Everyone, yes, and Hillary, we'd be happy to help any of you through the chat feature or email. Want to use yet another technology. Okay, ground rules just quickly. I'm sure everyone has seen this before and will be respectful this evening. All opinions count, keep an open mind. It's not really terribly easy to interrupt each other, I guess, on Zoom, but state your questions and comments clearly. And the golden rule, of course, respond to others how you would want to be responded to. So with that, and just a reminder of who's here to answer questions. Helen, Jake, Megan, you heard from in the presentation. Ryan Perry, again, is Director of Regional Planning and Transportation for the county. Jordan Carroll is a Communications Manager for the county. Thomas, also a Transportation Consultant, Thomas McMurtry. And finally, Shane Swenson from Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District. Okay, we have a couple questions up here, so let's just get right to it. Let's see here. Don Hernandez asks for the MPCs, the MPC zones that are shown, that are currently on the Rio Tinto land. Are we looking at more of a daybreak type community, particularly interested in the MPC areas in Magna? Will Rio Tinto retain ownership of the land? Jake, are you probably the best suited to answer that, I guess?
Sure, I'll start out and then Ryan and others can jump in. And the main idea behind the master plan communities is that they could be, of course, thoroughly planned out like Daybreak is in terms of where the streets are, trails, residential areas, town center areas, job areas. Large properties offer a unique opportunity to master plan an entire area and not just get hodgepodge development or block by block or building by building. And so that's kind of the main intent with master plan communities. Will they be like Daybreak? Potentially, but certainly there's been no planning on any of the master plan community areas other than the Olympia Hills property. Some of the land, many of this land, much of this land is in the foothills and some of it's in the mountains. that area is different topography. And a master planning community, that area would probably look much different than Daybreak. It would respond to the topography, the local, just the forested areas, the terrain. And I think I would hope that it would fit better into the foothills and the mountains than you would see maybe on a development that's more in the valley. The question is, would Rio Tinto hold on to that land? We don't know that answer. They're a landowner just like any other, and they could develop it themselves. They could sell the land. And so there's multiple options that could happen. Certainly adjacent cities could annex the land. Magna could annex the land. South Jordan, West Jordan, any of the surrounding communities could annex the land, and then it's developed within the cities. And that's a very probable outcome as well. Ryan, what would you like to add to that, if anything?
Yeah, it's just one of the key things about having that PC zone is just its proximity to Magna. And I'm maybe reading into your question a little bit, but it does require us to have a conversation about what's appropriate for that site and how that's being developed. And annexations are private property driven, and so I think that would be a decision of where they develop and how they develop. And I think that part of the reason why we have that PC zone on there is to allow us to have the conversation of what's best for that development to occur.
And I want to add one thing, is that recommendation of updating that master plan community, that what we're really calling for is a very robust process, so that before a planned community is rezoned or starts construction, there's that detailed planning of all the intricacies of the community, the housing, the trails, the jobs, the transportation, the utilities, stormwater, conservation areas, all that detailed and robust planning happens before there's a rezone. And so really diving into that detail when it's appropriate that the landowner is ready to move forward with that area.
Great, thank you very much. Let's move on to a transportation question. So Helen, get ready. Trevor Lithgow asks, I don't see many plans for major east-west roads. If the general plan isn't meant to plan for the major things, then who is? Or who, where, when, how does that happen? Helen, do you want to take the lead? And
Sure, I can do that. This major, when Trevor talks about major east-west roads, I assume that he means arterial and above, and probably regionally significant, which means that they would be planned by the Wasatch Front Regional Council as part of their regional transportation plan. And that is, as I said, every 4 years that is updated. They're about probably a fourth of the way in starting the 2023 to 2050 plan. And that is who plans for those major roads. So major roadways, or I should say arterials, those are the ones that are handled by Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Could we put that map up again?
Yeah, the WFRC.
Yeah.
And so we can look at,
Well, Helen, I was just going to add that not only are they Wasatch Front and UDOT working together to plan for those major roads, they're planning for a lot. It's that slide right there. There's a bunch of major east-west arterials that they're looking at. And most of these are 5 or 7 lane arterials. And then even beyond that, what Megan talked about on that specialized study, where they're looking at another major system connection between Mountain View and Bangor. I mean, those are as big as they come in terms of roadway planning. And so I think, Trevor, that there's a lot of major east-west roads that are being planned, through that LRTP process that Wasatch Front leads.
Yeah. LRT stands for long range transportation. So yeah, we're looking out that 30 years. And then also the preferred alternative for the Southwest Valley area is about $5 billion. So that tells you there's a lot of roadway infrastructure going in, and that would be not your local roads, but your arterials. Okay, go ahead.
And if I could add one thing to that, is that this plan, in terms of land jurisdiction, it's unincorporated county only. And so this plan can make recommendations for WFRC and others to consider, but the land authority is unincorporated only. But the county and all cities and and Wasatch Front Regional Council do work together for this 30-year plan.
It's absolutely a collaborative effort. Would it be helpful if I dropped the link to a map that you can click into and kind of see these projects? Okay, I'll drop that into the chat. It's just what's on the screen now, but this way you can click on the projects and see if they're maybe they're in phase 1, which is what we call the next about 10 years worth of funding, right? Or they're unfunded, which means they might be further down the road, no pun intended. So I'll drop this link in.
Okay. Thanks, Megan.
Thank
I
you,
was
Megan.
just going to ask for that. Could you talk about what's coming soonest? But that map will do it. So thank you. And that is in the chat box. Is that link? Okay. Let's see. 2 questions from Aaron Waite, and I'll deal with them separately. First one is there an opportunity to work with Kennecott to get access for recreation before mining operations are completed? I've lived in the shadows of these mountains for so long, but can't hike or enjoy the mountain. And yeah, I hear that. We hear that a lot. So that's a great question. Again, Jake, would you like to start on that, or Ryan? Or
one thing I would say is currently Salt Lake County Parks and Rec is doing the master plan for the Yellow Fork and Rose Canyon area, and they are in negotiation discussion with Rio Tinto on opening up more lands in the Butterfield Canyon area for recreation. And so the BLM, the county, and Rio Tinto are talking about and are planning to have a greater area. So that is happening there. Other areas on the north and central parts, which may be what you're looking at, I don't know of any specific plans. We have had these conversations. When we did our survey, that was one of the biggest comments we received for recreation. We are conveying this and sharing this information with Rio Tinto. I'm hoping that we could start to see more trails, maybe in the lower foothills parts. There are certain areas that they do not allow people to go beyond because of large pipes that are carrying materials that aren't necessarily safe for the public. And so maybe there's a potential for lower areas. I can't speak on behalf of them, but that is certainly a request that we've received a lot, and we're hoping that we can see more opportunities. Ryan, what do you have to add to that? It's a really good question, and we really do hope to see more opportunities.
And I think if you look at the sections that we're focusing on, what is the vision on this? You see an environment, you see a conservation, and then you see a recreation. And I think out of the 7, we have 3 really dedicated to how do we treat those open spaces and make sure that those are accessible. And so that's something that's absolutely top of our mind. And we hear it all the time from our residents on the west side, that you know, there's a big desire to open up those areas. And right now, those are on our long range post closure maps. We don't have ownership of that land, and so I think the next question goes hand in hand with this item. And so I hope it's okay, Brian, if I just jump in that.
Yeah,
as well.
go ahead. How about can I read it quickly?
Oh, sure.
Sure. Second is how are transit options going to reduce? Is that the one you meant, or the next one?
No, oh, sorry, I didn't see that one.
You met Don Hernandez asking a similar
yes.
question. Okay, yeah, feel free. Don asked, did I understand correctly that Rio Tinto won't open up any types of hiking trails until the mine officially shuts down?
Yeah. And so the answer is there's always conversation happening about what opportunities can open up, and we're really excited about some hiking trails that we prioritize for the Yellow Fork and Rose Canyon area. And we're trying to have that happen now. And so I think that Rio Tinto is constantly addressing their mining needs and what's active and what's not. So we will absolutely keep that conversation open. But in terms of right now, planning wise, those are our long range goals for those areas that were not part of the short term portions.
Yeah, interest in recreation in the Oquirrhs is as Jake mentioned, one of the biggest issues. It's not an understatement, particularly with the usage the Wasatch Mountains are seeing now, and all other open spaces. That's on people's minds. Okay, Aaron Wade asked a second question. How are transit options going to reduce commute times to job centers? From where I live in Magna, near 800 West and 3500 South, it takes over 2 hours one way to get downtown when I can drive it in 15 minutes. Lowering transit time is the only way to encourage more ridership. Okay, so we've got 3 transportation experts. Let's start with Helen.
Thomas, go for it.
I'd be happy to talk about this. So Aaron, the good news is that UTA is certainly aware of this, and they are absolutely planning on making improvements on 35th, right near where you're suggesting you live. The MAX line is suspended, right, on 35th South, on the west side, the BRT line. And so, but that's supposed to be a temporary suspension, and they continue to have, plans to improve that. We are showing it on the long range plan. They're also looking at how that can connect for further east-west movement and doesn't just get you to the tracks station, but actually can continue on. So connecting Magna to both the light rail system and the whole rest of the system is something that UTA is certainly aware of and that they're concerned with. It's something that they are planning for, looking at not just the return of the BRT, but also supplementing it with core bus kind of in between the routes for a lot quicker response times and shorter wait times, shorter headways at the bus stops. The timing of that, I don't think we really know. Obviously, COVID has thrown a wrench in a lot of UTA's operations and ridership. And so, I think that we're still kind of trying to understand that and see where things kind of settle. But it is absolutely on their plans for increased transit out to Magna.
Right. And the other thing, too, is to remember that UTA just approved, their Board of Trustees just approved a 5-year operational service plan. And so there's a lot of, and maybe Megan can put that link into the chat where you can go in and look at specifically the sort of changes that will be coming forward in the next couple of years to increase ridership and frequency, and especially core routes that will help with mobility, meaning that it's not a bus that stops at every stop, that actually it provides more mobility for longer distances.
Yeah, moves faster.
Yeah. Considering a lot of areas on the west side don't have the density to make really frequent transit work well, UTA has been experimenting with the micro transit operation in the southwest part of the valley. Is that something that could be expanded more, assuming it's successful, into areas like Magna and elsewhere on the west side?
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. That's an on-demand service that allows people to have pickups at kind of at corner cross sections of streets that would take them to the front runner or to track service and other locations where they need to go. So that is a way to kind of build ridership. So yes, it's certainly a possibility.
It was successful enough in the pilot area that the pilot was extended. So that's good news. They have lots of great data based on that initial trial.
Great. Thanks, Helen and Megan. It's great to see that there are some innovative things happening out there. in areas where especially needed. Okay, we have lots of time left, and okay, good. Ask more questions. We need some more questions here. I am going to, this is a comment from Benyon Gardner, representing the Ochre Foundation. Excuse me. And says, areas such as the Soldier Flats, Coon Canyon should be designated for conservation to preserve West Side residents with equitable access to open space and outdoor recreation. Developing all but the steepest slopes of the Oquirrhs would be incredibly short-sighted, damaging to the environment, and negatively impact the quality of life for residents. County should work with the state, Rio Tinto, and cities to make a major conservation effort in the Oquirrhs. This plan, as presented, falls far short of that. So, a good comment, a good critical view there. Who wants to take the lead there? Ryan, would you like to start?
Sure, and thank you, Benyon, and I appreciate the conversation. And I know we've chatted previous to this as well, and we really appreciate what your organization does and how you value the Ochre Mountains. And I think that we have a lot of common ground that we can work towards, because I don't think I'm saying that we should develop everything but the steep portions of the mountains, and I want that equal opportunity too. So if the plan falls short, we have time to work together to really kind of fine tune that and see where it falls short, and if we can have some common ground. You know, it is challenging to say that nothing can happen in the canyons except for recreation, and I think that we want to be open-minded when it comes to, you know, what does those canyon areas look like, and is there any amenities or are there no amenities? But the priority and dedication to open space and recreation, I think, is a common goal of both of us.
Thanks, Ryan. Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
I would just add that when it comes to land use conservation, you know, that was the first goal for creating a conservation plan and a process. And I would hope that process includes funding mechanisms, working with everybody, as mentioned, the state, the county, the municipalities. That is a goal that we have. And we have to remember that the landowner does have the right to develop. That is a property right. However, they can choose to sell it. There can be negotiated. There's a lot of opportunities there. But even today, if Rio Tinto chose, they could act. The current zoning does allow for development even today. Not a medium or a higher density. It's a lower density, but development is actually an option today up in that area according to current zoning. And what we're hoping is that through this process and a series of steps in the future, that as much conservation as is allowed and that can be purchased and worked together happens. That is a top priority of the plan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. Okay, next question. Don Hernandez asks, with the future widening of Highway 111, is the county taking this into account and not approving homes and buildings to be built close to the road? Oops. Built close to the road and will have to be torn down later. Basically, avoiding a similar situation like Bangor Highway with ripping down new homes, dealing with the amount of right-of-way that is reserved for the road and so forth. Are those things taken into consideration on the U11 planning?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to talk about this, Brian. So, by the way, UDOT is actually taking a close look at U111 right now, south of Magna. So from 41st south down through New Bingham Highway to the end of kind of West Jordan, South Jordan border. And then south of that, they're looking at it as well, but south of it, they're looking at building a new road. What is Magna's Highway, kind of straightening it out and come up with a different plan. But for that main section of U111, they are, that's on the Wasatch Front Long Range Plan that you saw on the map. They are looking at, preserving enough right away so that it won't be impactful to future residents. In fact, There's a section in West Jordan where they've already built homes on both sides, and they've preserved 130 feet of right of way. It even has the trail built for a few blocks, like 4-block section from about 78th South to like 84th South or something. And there's a trail on the west side, and then there's fences, and then there's homes. And so they preserved enough right of way so that they're not going to have to come back later to, you know, widen the road to take out homes. So obviously those new developments would continue to preserve that same corridor.
Good. Long range planning has a purpose, right? And a good one. Planners have learned a lot over the years too, right? So, okay, we have no more questions in the queue. So please raise your hand or type in a question. One area that hasn't come up yet in the questions is water. And I wanted to give Shane Swenson an opportunity to jump in and talk about the future of water and water conservation, and how do we get it to these places? What will it cost? All of those kinds of things. Very important issue in developing new areas. So would you mind giving us an overview, Shane?
Yeah, no problem at all. The people out there already know how much land's out there and how much development can occur and is occurring currently. And that is putting a stress on our water supplies. And as it develops, it'll increase the stress on those supplies. In the past, we've been lucky to have as much water as we want, but it's getting to the point where the cheap water is no longer available, and we're going to look at more expensive solutions. And critical to all of that is making sure that we practice water conservation. We will not have enough supply if we don't start conserving our water. And what that means is that we need to really, most of our water is used on our landscapes. And so we really need to look at our landscapes and decide that we need to be more water efficient with our landscapes. And that doesn't mean going to a New Mexico model where it's gravel and dirt and cactuses, but it means limiting the amount of lawn on your yards and using more plants that are built for this type of climate. And that is something that Jordan Valley is working heavily on, working with the different municipalities to change their ordinances to allow this type of landscaping, and to get, most important right now is to get ahead of all the new development and create those opportunities to save that water now, because once they come in, it gets very expensive to change them out. And that will make it very expensive in the future, where we have to go in and tear out all these lawns just so that we have enough water for drinking. But yeah, water conservation is going to become critical. It's critical now if we want to plan for or be able to develop the rest of the land out on the west side.
Muted again. Sorry. Thank you, Shane. That was helpful. Let's see.
Brian, can I just apologize to the audience for that chat feature? We've taken that offline, but
I actually can't see it. So.
Yeah, that was just to one of the attendees shared some things that he shouldn't have. Let's just say that. But just to the attendees, the participants were not able to, and it has been dealt with. So thank you. Okay, let's see here. Any other raised hands or questions out there? Don't be shy. If not, we can talk about other areas that we haven't talked too much about yet. Water. How about the relationship between the jurisdictions going forward. That model that you showed earlier of the progression of plans, all of these jurisdictions do plans of one sort or another, right? Or general plan, transportation plans, and so forth. How does that work in the real world, where we're talking about a county plan with unincorporated areas next to cities with their areas, with their plans, and so forth? How in the real world does a connection made between those plans and implementation? It's something that confuses me all the time with all of the many jurisdictions out there, who does what and why. And Jake, could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Thanks, Brian. In preparing this plan, we've been looking at and studying the general plans of all the communities on the west side, the cities, metro towns, all of those areas. Also looking at their transportation plans. And by studying those plans, we're able to understand what are the current adopted recommendations for the communities on the west side. Those are brought into consideration when developing this plan. Also, we're having ongoing discussion with community city staff members and also their leaders as part of this plan. And that is part of it as well. So we look at what the county has planned, we look at what the cities have planned, and then also having a conversation and dialogue with not only the public, but also the elected officials and staff. And when it comes to annexing land from unincorporated into the cities, in this case, we've mapped out, and you'll see in our overview existing condition study, there's a map showing annexations of all the communities on the west side and what areas have they looked at annexing. In some cases, it's 2 or 3 communities or cities have looked at annexing a single area. And so the county or this doesn't say, oh, this land goes to this city or that one goes to that city. Annexation process typically happens by self-determination by the landowner. The landowner would choose to file an application and annex from unincorporated to a city. And that's how the process typically happens. And in some cases, 2 cities may say that they want a certain land, but the landowner would choose. Now there are cases where small little islands within cities or unincorporated areas may get annexed by a city, but in this case, the process will be typically the landowner chooses to annex and where they go. Does that go at what you were going towards, Brian?
Yes, yes, thank you very much.
And I'll just add on to that just a bit and
Sure.
say that the nice thing about general plans and annexations and zoning is that there's multiple public engagement opportunities. These are not final documents. This one is a visioning document that's a guide for future decision makers. But there's opportunity built into this for lots of input session as things move forward.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. So, and it's getting close to time. So how about if we wrap up, unless anyone has a last minute question, please let us know now. Going once, going twice. Let's see. Okay, as Ryan just said, this is definitely not the last time, the last opportunity you have to weigh in on this plan. Let's see here. We have one more meeting on like this coming up on Monday. That is similar presentation, but with the focus on the southwest part of the Oquirrhs and the Traverse Mountains, Harriman, Riverton, Bluffdale, High Country Estates, and Camp Williams area. So we encourage you to join that if you have an interest in doing so, Monday at 5:30. Also, all of these sessions are being recorded and will be posted on the West Plan website, which the URL is on the screen there, www.slco.org/West plan. And there is a great deal of other resource information there as well that you can dig into, and some great interactive maps and tools there. Let's see, what else do I need to say before we sign off? I think that's about it. Am I missing anything?
Just a big thank you to our attendees. We really appreciate your time.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I was.
Can I recognize a few more people that I failed to recognize at the beginning?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
So first of all, Representative Elizabeth Waite, thank you for joining us. Pam Gill with the Kearns Improvement District, thank you for being with us. And then Sophia DiCaro, the Senior Advisor and Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Management and Budget. We appreciate your attendance.
Great. Indeed, yes, thank you. And thanks, Ryan, for that. The thing I was neglecting to say was after this process with these outreach meetings, the plan itself will be drafted, continue to be drafted. Draft plan then submitted to the county council, or excuse me, the county planning commission in the coming months for their review. They will have a public hearing, and then that process will be repeated at the county council level. So hopefully finishing the plan up by the end of the year. So well, that's it. I appreciate everyone's time. All of the panelists, thank you. All of the participants, especially thank you for great questions and your interest and willingness to take some time out of your day today. So that's it. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.